So the first thing we have a special meeting to take care of one issue. So we are going to start with Pledge of Allegiance. And the Vice Mayor to help us out.
Okay. Right hand over your heart. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Okay, at this time I'd like to call the meeting to order. Individuals wishing to address the City Council are requested to complete a speaker card and deliver the card to the City Clerk's staff prior to the item being heard by the City Council. Please observe a 3-minute limit for communications. Once called upon to speak, we request that you state your name and city of residence for the record. We're going to go to communications from the public. This portion of the agenda is intended for general public comment only on items within the council's jurisdiction that are not listed elsewhere on the agenda. Please note the state law prohibits City Council from discussing or taking action on these items. Please observe a 3-minute limit for communications, and once called upon to speak, we request that you state your name and city of residence for the record. Ms. Edwards, are there any speaker cards from the public?
Mayor, I did not receive any speaker cards.
Awesome. So let's go right into our one and only resolution amending the ballot question for the commercial cannabis business tax measure to be placed on the November 8th, 2022 general municipal election ballot. Does any council member want a staff report on the item? I'm sensing a overwhelming urge to say no. So, Ms. Edwards, are there any speaker cards from the public?
Mayor, I did not receive any speaker cards.
Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? All right. Is it?
Motion to approve.
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Okay,
Aye.
perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to adjourn this meeting and start the
Get back
next.
to the golf game now.
Yeah, look at those pants, man.
You look good, Steve. Don't look good.
Sorry to take you off the course.
Okay. See, we're going to convene our next meeting, which is the committee of the whole meeting. Individuals, this is all going to sound very familiar, wishing to address the City Council are requested to complete a speaker card and deliver the card to the City Clerk prior to the item being heard by the City Council. Please observe a 3-minute limit for communication when it's called upon to speak. We request that you state your name and city of residence for the record. Communications from the public. This portion of the agenda is intended for general public comment. Only on items within the council's jurisdiction that are not listed elsewhere on the agenda. Please note the state law prohibits City Council from discussing or taking action on these items. Please observe a 3-minute limit for communications, and once called upon to speak, we request that you state your name and city of residence for the record. Ms. Edwards, do we have any speaker cards for the communication from the public for this meeting?
Mayor, I did not receive any speaker cards.
Awesome. So we will go right into our first item, which is the Urban Forest Management Plan update.
Moses, why can't we get you a hat?
We can get one.
This is willing to accept the hat. I think he has no qualms with it.
I've had my shaved head since I was in high school, so it's just me. All right, well, thank you, everybody. I have 2 presentations. My first one, they're both feel-good ones, so nothing there.
Okay.
Yeah. Alrighty, so just wanted to come back. Been, almost about a year since we came back with the Urban Forest Management Plan. And we just wanted to provide some updates to you guys, and we'll continue to provide updates. So, wanted to kind of recap what we did last year. As you remember, we adopted the Urban Forest Management Plan in May of 2021. At that time, we also approved the process of transitioning to grid pruning. Since then, we also worked with our vendor and our GIS to create an interactive grid pruning map. That's a screenshot of it right there. Lays out all the city and what year the trees will be trimmed in that particular grid. We spread it over the course of all 5 council districts, so each council district will receive trimming a little bit each year, so it's spread across the board evenly. We also trimmed a little over 10,000 trees last year, and I'll get some more details as we get further into the presentation on that. And we also completed all our C-click fixes that were requested for last fiscal year, so those were all completed. We planted 1,285 trees last year, and we continue to participate in CAL FIRE grants as well as looking for additional CAL FIRE grants that we can participate in. So what's to come? This is exciting stuff. We are gonna do 3,000 trees over the next 5 years like we had discussed. And we are currently in the process of doing that. So as we speak right now, we are planting actively. We have a full-time planting crew here, as well as a full-time watering crew. Right now, we're planting everything that was, any trees that were removed during spring or early summer, all those vacant tree wells are currently being refilled, so we don't leave them vacant. And we're also planting some of our major arterials. So over the next 6-8 weeks, you'll start to see a lot of trees going in along some of those major arterials, Foothill, Green River, River Road, Promenade, some of those areas. Watering is included, especially with us entering into the drought restrictions. So we're able to work with our vendor WCA. They will be providing watering for 1 year to all the trees. This is not an additional cost to us. It actually benefits them as well. They don't want to be on the hook for, the tree has a 1-year warranty. So they don't want the tree to die. So it's in their benefit as well as our benefit to ensure that tree gets off to a successful start. So they'll do all the watering for 1 year. For those that either don't have an irrigation system or would like a watering bag, gator bag, we will provide that for our residents. And we'll also provide them with the tree care kit, which is just a single sheet that just kind of outlines what the tree will be looking like over the first year, what to expect with it over the first year, and how to care for their tree. We also have additional volunteer tree plantings that were going to occur each quarter. So all throughout our calendar year 2023, we will be doing a quarterly tree planting somewhere in the city. So for pruning and removals,
Can you go back to the picture really quick?
yeah.
Thank you.
That's me.
I think you're in my neighborhood.
No,
Is that you?
no, I wish. So year one grid pruning is currently in process. So grid 1A is where we're at right now, and then we'll go into 1B, 1C, 1D, and 1E.
You want to
And
see
what
an
is the-
impressive picture is when they trim the really tall palms on Chase.
Yeah,
That's insane how high they are up. It really is. It blows me away how high they get.
it's insane. Then the tree's rocking.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's scary.
Yeah.
And so just so you know that a resident in that interactive portal can put in their street address, like if that map is too much to handle, like for my eyes, it's too much to handle to figure it out, you can actually put your address in the interactive portal and it will tell you what area you're in, what grid pruning area you are in, and when you can expect your tree to be trimmed.
Wow, that's great.
There's a little search bar. It'll give you a little quick blurb. It'll tell you, like Ann said, what year. It'll also tell you what kind of tree you have in front of your house. Just be curious.
Perfect.
Last fiscal year, so we trimmed 2,264 trees. Some of these trees that we trimmed, we're catching up on some of that deferred maintenance. Hadn't been trimmed in probably 10 to 15 years. There were some trees that really were in need of service. So we're definitely catching up that baseline trimming. Annually, our trimming are all of our palm trees. So as part of the grid pruning process, every year all the palms will be pruned. We do that throughout summer and into early fall. So that's actually occurring right now as we speak. And will be done probably right around mid to end of October. It's kind of nice we get that done. That's when the trees are starting to fruit and seed anyways. And as we get into the Santa Ana winds and any winter rains that we may get, we're not out collecting all the palm fronds on the streets, just kind of keeps the city looking a little cleaner. We did do 551 tree removals, but I want to note that of those 551 tree removals, all of those met the criteria for removal. So it wasn't just arbitrarily removed. They were either dead, declining, or met the criteria if they were causing a lot of significant damage to somebody's infrastructure or pushing a water meter over. But that is part of that list that we are replanting right now. So those trees will be replaced and the site will not be left vacant.
Awesome.
A majority of the tree chippings are reused as mulch. We just recently mulched Foothill Parkway from Monticello down to California. And we're also going to be doing some areas off of McKinley and Promenade, Parkview areas. So all that is reused mulch. The only thing we don't reuse is the palm chippings, he doesn't want to put like 1,000 palm trees growing. So, but all the rest of it is reused. And as noted, if somebody does want to have their tree removed, there is the appeals process in the urban forest management plan. And that is basically for them to come in front of Parks Commission and then a recommendation from Parks Commission to City Council if that person or resident would like to pursue the removal of their tree.
And it doesn't meet our criteria.
Yeah. And
We haven't had anybody go that
this
far.
time we have not. So we've had some people that had a little apoplexy about,
That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah,
It's an oxymoron.
about having the tree removed. And it was really nice. So our Nabardo arborist and Dave Roger, one of our contractual arborists, and a lot of our staff have been able to work with the resident and kind of educate them on why not to remove it, the benefits, what it might look like without it. And we've been able to meet them in the middle. So like, hey, let's just do a little corrective pruning on it. If it's starting to, if you're worried about it, starting to maybe crack your driveway or sidewalk, let us do some root pruning on it. Let us monitor it over the next few years and see what it looks like. So we've been able to kind of like mitigate some of those issues and work with the residents on education, and it seems to be working really well. People seem to be, really, they perceive it really well. So it's just kind of taking that extra step to, hey, can we meet you at 3 o'clock when you get off work, and we'll come out there and we'll meet with you.
No, that's great.
So,
Moses, before you go on to the next section, I have a question. So I live in 1A, and there was pruning done all in my neighborhood. And I noticed that they put signs up, hey, we're gonna be trimming trees and all that good kind of stuff. And I noticed that there were some cars that were parked in a way that prevented some trees from being pruned. Do we have any type of mechanism to go out there and help these guys out? I mean, it kind of sad because you drive along Fairview and you see all these beautifully trimmed trees, and then there's like 2 or 3 that there was a car parked there.
so we'll return. So all those are noted in Arbor Access. So at the end of the month, when they invoice us, they'll tell us what sites got skipped, and they'll say why it was skipped. So
Okay.
car park, beehive, whatever it may be, power line. We'll come back and we'll either do, we'll work with the resident to get notification to move their car. If there's
Yeah.
a beehive, we'll treat the beehive, and then they'll come back. So we will come back and get all those missed skip sites.
Okay, thank you.
So now we'll get into the tree planting. So that's actually on Harrington. So I should have got a different picture, but if you go, so Harrington, I know.
I see trees.
It's really cool. Both sides that's kind of like that tree lined look we're going for. So the whole stretch from Harrington between Lincoln and Coda, had a bunch of vacant sites. One side is an HOA, and the other side is the new condos that are along the channel. And the side that was against the HOA, all the trees had been removed, over, I don't even know how many years, but, they were all vacant. And it just was like kind of sparse popsicle sticks out there. We ended up removing the rest of the dead trees and contacted the HOA, let them know what we were going to be doing, let them know that we'd be watering them, because that was their first question. Well, who's responsible for watering them? Like, we will.
Forever or for a year?
For the first year, just get them established, and then the irrigation from the turf will, be plenty for them to be native and just grow that way. But we'll get that deep root watering that first year by hand watering them.
Along that line real quick, I noticed there's, a lot of places in town where the trees are on city property and you can see the roots on top of the grass.
And
That's because they weren't watered properly in the first year, but they continue to not be watered real deep, right? Because it's just spraying grass.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to get away from. So now all new construction and all new installs, if it's a new track, it actually comes with all new tracks like LMDs or anything, not the way with bunch, but like that track that's being built on Lincoln and High Grove right now, that little LMD that is getting put in, all the valves are separately for the tree. So they continue to get that deeper watering.
Perfect.
So it's no more overhead spray.
Yeah.
And then by doing the hand watering for the first year, that's gonna help get those roots to go down, and they won't need that surface root water.
Cool.
So it's a really neat street to look at. It's like one of my favorite ones now to drive to the yard that way. So yeah, we're in year 1 planting right now. Like I said, you're gonna start seeing a lot of those major arterials planted. We're in the neighborhoods planting those vacant sites from the trees that were removed. We're also working right now to do a potential grant to plant an additional 1,500 trees. We'll see how that works, and that actually ties in with the second to last bullet down there. It's a CAL FIRE grant that would be planting a lot of underprivileged areas, a lot of the downtown areas, as well as a heat index area. So there's a map that lays out all the heat index. And there's basically this whole downtown area is in that orange and yellow area. So we would be looking to plant those areas, and that would be in addition to the 3,000 that we're gonna plant. So fingers crossed, we'll hopefully know by the first of the year how that's looking.
Yep. Great.
Again, we're doing our volunteer tree plantings quarterly, so you'll see those advertised for residents to come out and work with us, or nonprofits that want to help out. The planting is 3,000 over the next 5 years, and we'll stay on target with that.
So it's per year though,
It's
3,000
3,000 per year.
for 5 years,
For
so
5 years.
15,000 total.
Yep.
Okay, just wanna make sure.
Tree plantings also include, like I said, the 1 year of water, and that's, again, we just want to stress that success for the trees. We don't want to just plant them and walk away from them. And then the last bullet point there, resident refusals. Again, it kind of comes back to the education piece like we do with the removals. For residents, like, I just do not want a tree in front of my house. We will work with them to educate them and work with them on different species and let them know that, it's okay to plant the tree, you're not gonna have this damage. We're not trying to just plop a tree and walk away from it. So we will be planting a tree at every vacant site. If somebody absolutely is adamant that they do not want the tree, then we're gonna have them run through the appeals process that's outlined in the urban forest management plan. We'll plant the site, and then they can come before commission and then make the recommendation to council if we in fact do decide to remove that planted tree, and we'll end up remove it and put it at a different site, so it's not like the tree will be lost, we'll put it at a different site. So education outreach, these are some pictures from some of our volunteer tree planting days. We did quite a few last year, and again, we plan to do more this year. So, as you guys saw that snapshot of the urban urban forest management webpage, again, there's a bunch of information on there. We'll keep adding to it. We're gonna be doing our Arbor Fest again this year, so that'll take place at Citrus Park again. That's where we'll be doing our March Madness giveaway. We'll be doing the celebration of Arbor Day that day, and we'll actually do our proclamation this year for Arbor Day that day of. We also kicked off our Ask an Arborist series with our arborist in Navardo. So that's up and running, and we'll be doing our second Ask an Arborist series here in the next couple months. We'll be putting that up. And those are just some fun facts to kind of talk about why my tree is losing its leaves, or how to care for your tree, how to water your tree, what's that white fuzzy stuff on my tree, So we'll go over all that, it's aphids, or whatever, it's mites. So we'll go over all that stuff. And I'm also happy, we have the holiday tree planted. The planted holiday tree, so that's gonna be an annual thing for us. So the big tree that we had last year is up at Border Park. Every year when we get that tree, we'll put it at a different site, and we're tracking all those in our Braxis, and we'll be putting a plaque out there, so each year will kind of commemorize what year that holiday tree was.
Great.
And then last thing, like I said, I'm happy to say that we are back to being a Tree City USA. We should be getting our materials from
That's so
Tree City
awesome.
USA
Way too
this
long.
fall. So we should get our flag this fall.
What does that mean?
So, basically a city that's recognized as valuing its urban forest, so there's criteria,
Yeah.
you have to invest a certain amount of money to urban forest, plant a certain amount of trees. There's all these categories, how much you spend in plant healthcare, evaluations and all that stuff,
We
so
were one for many years and then haven't been one for a while, but yeah,
probably
very
about
cool.
5 or 6 years.
Do we get a flag?
You get
So there-
flag and you get signs, so
So
you can
this
put
is-
signs around the city, so as you enter the city,
Yeah.
it says Tree City USA.
So the flag in the past has always kind of historically been flown up at Chase and Main right there. There's a set of 3 flags, that's kind of where it's been in the past. So once we get that, I'll have Ann work with you guys to kind of let you guys know what's up.
Do we get a lot of flags?
I don't think we get a lot.
We get
get
the
one.
one,
We
and
get
one,
one,
and there's a
yeah.
hat. You get a hat that says Tree City USA.
We'll rotate throughout the year.
Wait for that hat.
Cool. And that wraps up the presentation of urban forest management plan. Again, we just wanted to kind of come back and thank you guys for, supporting us in this. It's been a really fun process. I'm looking forward to getting all those trees in the ground and continuing our grid pruning. If you guys have any questions or anything, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
I know at Arbor Day, I told both of you about the program the city of Riverside has with the free trees. Have you been able to look into that at all for Corona?
I did, so I looked a little bit on it. The program they were offering is actually through their utilities department. So they do it for cooling to like reduce electric use, but there are other programs out there that I can work with CAL FIRE on, trying to work on some
Oh,
stuff
okay.
like that.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, just one more thing to brag about. Great job.
Thank you.
I have, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying no.
Oh, no.
Now then when he does this, he's gonna talk. When he does this, he's not gonna talk.
Right.
Go
Yeah.
for it.
Mannerisms.
Yep.
Well, I think Moses and Ann nailed this, aced it. So it's super cool. I had one question. Are the pepper trees, are they worth it or are they a pain in the ass?
Because of sucker growth and the water sprouts you get, I mean, there's some maintenance, but, you know, there's a lot of them down in the circle, and I wouldn't want to take them out. I mean, as they start to deteriorate and we had to get cavities in them, then we will remove them, but we'll replace them.
They're great beehives.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the one that's behind Connie's house and by my house, I was bummed when it finally, well, there's like 5 of them and they're over 100 years old.
Yeah, I've had to cut you down so far.
Yeah, 2 have fallen down.
And then the campfire, he'd asked if we could leave just the trunk and
Oh,
leave it
right.
a planter or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess my question is does the city want to go forward with the pepper trees still, or do they want to phase them out over time?
I mean, we could look at that. I mean, I wouldn't want to say to phase them all out. I mean, they're a nice tree, just as they get older, yeah, they do get the cavities, but.
And they make a mess out of your yard and your swimming pool.
I don't think they're a top priority on our, so we have an approved street tree list that's part of the urban forest management plan. And the pepper tree is lower down on that list, so it wouldn't be our first choice for replanting.
Okay.
And then, with Jacob, I think everything these two have said is gold. So is there any way that Sean and the team can like make a video out of there?
Ann can do the video.
Or Ann, or both of them,
Yes,
but
certainly.
like,
Yeah, we already have plans to highlight this in upcoming videos.
because it's really cool that you can see a tree in the computer when you're, and it's.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've seen some of the series that they're doing, and we also have more videos that are coming to highlight the replanting that's going on, so that's already in the works, so yes.
Cool. That's it.
Jackie.
I like those pepper trees. I grew up hiding in them, climbing them and hiding in them. But anyway, all right. I have a few questions. Do residents know that the gator bags and the care kits are available to them, or are they like on a secret menu and they have to know to ask?
No, they know, so especially if we see a house that like clearly has like no irrigation or whatever.
Yeah.
Because we're knocking on doors ahead of time, so they know that they're not just gonna like come home with the trees in the yard. So we're doing prior notifications. Also, people will call them like, hey, I saw like paint marks out on my street. It's an underground surface alert before we dig. So they'll call them like, what's up with paint marking? We'll let them know. So we try to let them know that a tree's coming.
Okay.
And again, if we see, we'll offer them the tree care kit. And for sure, if we see one that like has 0 irrigation, or they might have like artificial turf in their parkway where they don't have irrigation anymore, then we'll offer the gator bag.
So the gator bag is offered when you all see it necessary. It's not a thing that's offered as part of the, hey, we're gonna do this, and if you want, we can also give you a gator bag.
It hasn't been, but if they have questions like, well, I don't have water, I don't have any means to water, or,
Yeah.
we've had a couple of people that were unable to get out and actually physically water their tree with a hose or whatever, I'm like,
And primarily it's for new trees, right?
Yeah.
Because at some point the tree gets too big and you really can't
Sure.
put anything on
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And
No,
again,
I'm just thinking about the
Yeah.
operation of it all, and I just think there's gonna be a lot of people who maybe don't think of it, or don't know what to ask, and not knowing ahead of time, or it not being offered.
So we want to make sure that we're knocking those neighborhoods before we plant trees, or the day that we're planting, we want to go around. We want to leave the tree care kit information for them in both English and Spanish.
And the care kit says that you can get a gator bag.
And it will say that you can get the care kit will come with the information, and then on the bottom of it, it will say, if you need a gator bag, please don't hesitate to call us.
And
But
does it tell folks what the gator bag is?
Yes,
Okay,
we have pictures, it's very clear, this is the tree that's coming in, this is how you use a gator bag. For the first year,
Yeah.
they won't really need that because those are guaranteed to be watered in the first year. The gator bag would really be maybe for year 2 or 3 if they didn't have irrigation, and then we would need to also come back and educate them, especially if they don't have any kind of irrigation there, about how to get some water to that tree.
Okay.
But the good thing, just to piggyback off of that, is, so WCA, like I said, is out watering them regularly. So if they come across one, and like, they're really good about communicating with us. So if they go out to the site and they're like, hey, this tree, like we're watering it, but you can see it's clearly got signs of stress because it has no irrigation or whatever. Yeah, we would, make a point of letting
Yeah.
one of our guys know to go by, knock on the door, and
Yeah.
make contact with them.
This is, all of this is a very labor intensive, it's a good kind of labor, but it's a very labor intensive project. So just thinking about like, if we can be proactive with the information, if that helps us avoid a couple steps down the road. That's where my.
It's also on the Urban
Plan.
Forest webpage, so I mean, if somebody is computer literate and they have a propensity to do that, all of
Yeah.
everything that we hand out will be on the webpage, but we want to make sure it's accessible in lots of different modalities, and WCA is a great partner with us. They're happy to do some of this work for us, we're happy to support, we're happy to do it as a team.
Awesome. And I'm wondering if the plantings are gonna be their own separate volunteer opportunities, or will they be part of like the Corona Beautiful quarterly cleanups?
We actually did specific
Will
tree
be
planting days.
separate, yeah.
So we have our Corona Beautifuls, we have
Yeah.
the Skyline.
It's a lot of
Yeah.
volunteer
I
opportunities,
know.
I love that.
I had to put the thing up on the refrigerator. So
Yeah,
everything
I
else-
feel like there's a lot going on.
Oh, we can-
And then my last question is, the appeals, I'm happy to hear that the appeals process is essentially the same process for someone who wants to remove a tree and then for someone who wants to refuse a tree. Because I wanna make sure that there are as few gaps in between trees as possible. So what you're telling me then is that when we're going and knocking on people's doors, we're not necessarily giving them an option of whether or not to have a tree. We're saying there's a tree that's gonna go in.
More of an education.
Okay,
And with an educational piece. So
Okay.
You can usually read the residents right away,
Yeah.
right?
because it's for our community, it's for all of us, right? So it might be in front of your house, but it's for all of us,
Yeah.
right? So, okay, I appreciate that. That's it. Thank you.
Yep, couple questions. So you had, so it says here, applying for CAL FIRE grants to plant in underprivileged heat indexed areas. Are those areas not already on the plan to plant? And they're only gonna get planted if we have a grant?
They will be planted, but
Okay.
we need an extra 1,500 trees. I mean, the rest of the trees, we can either put in other, parks or open space.
Yeah.
But if the trees are paid for through the grant, then that's a budget savings for us.
Okay, and then you just said something about folks that have artificial turf in the green belt. Would you potentially put a tree around, like uproot their artificial turf and then put a tree in?
So those sites like that, we're definitely gonna, they're not just gonna tear the grass up and like knock them, again, that'll be that notification process back to us where we're gonna have to make contact with the resident, let them know, cause, there's a multitude of, it could be either paver, maybe it has pavers, okay, we're not gonna obviously pull the pavers up. We're gonna have to work with them on that, some have concreted their driveway or a section of their parkway in.
Right.
Or, artificial turf, so those are all those case by case basis, is that we need to knock on the door, make arrangements with them to get that tree put in. So we're not just like cutting the slice in the artificial and dropping it in.
But that's one of those areas where they could say, nope, don't want a tree. Nope, don't want to disrupt my landscaping. And then you're not gonna put a tree in, but they have to go in and talk to parks about that?
Yeah, we'd have to go through an appeals process to make sure.
But that's an area that you wouldn't just put a tree in though.
No, we wouldn't be able to, I'm not gonna do damage to their turf.
Right.
But if it's just a regular conventional parkway,
Yeah,
I don't want a tree, we're gonna put the tree in.
yeah.
We can go through the appeals process to have that newly planted tree removed, but if it's artificial turf and they're like, you are not going to put a tree in my parkway, then obviously we're not gonna, cause damage to their artificial
Got
turf.
it. Thank you.
I just want to say how well it's worked. I've interacted with a couple of residents over off of Mountain Gate, and they were just, every comment that I would write back to them about how trees are good, they would just rail how I do not want this tree. I do not want, no matter what I said, I could have said it was gonna, save, starving children in Africa. I don't want a tree. And then after talking to you guys, they were like, great, you guys got us a new tree, perfect, thank you. So thank you, keep doing what you're doing. It's definitely a quality of life thing that it's one of the more sad things to see a bunch of empty tree wells. So happy to see that we're gonna be filling some of those up. All right. Let's see, I was thinking about skipping to number 3. Is Jason here, or is he?
I'm gonna be doing.
You're gonna do number, okay, all right, let's just,
Mayor, sorry, we do
Yeah.
have a speaker that wants to speak on this.
oh, I apologize, yeah, sorry.
So I have 3 things that I can't find. Is the urban forestry portal, is it up somewhere? Cause I was Googling it, trying to find it.
There's a link under parks, so I can get that to you guys.
Yeah, so is that, I'm just trying to make it concrete, well, so to speak, about our neighborhood. We had 2 trees in front of our house when we moved in. One was on one side of the driveway, one was on the other. They were both city trees. The one to the south died. And we widened the driveway. So, is that still a tree well? Or is it just one lot, 1 trees? I don't know anybody else that had 2 trees, except for corner lots possibly. Is that gonna have to be like, okay, we're gonna poke a hole through the driveway, or is that something I have to go appeal? Or is it just one house, 1 tree? Cause we love our other tree, it's doing just fine.
I have to look, so the inventory was collected in 2015, and that's where all our vacant sites were collected, and anything since then. So I'd have to, the driveway went, so for example, if the driveway went in before 2015, it would have just been collected as a singular site, which is the one that you have right now.
Yeah, if the tree was gone before that, then
Okay.
I think the driveway went in.
Okay.
So the other one is, so we had neighbors that maybe Wes had talked to, that were like, no, had 2 really nice trees. We had several neighbors that have had healthy trees removed.
75-foot
Because they didn't want them. And then, did rock or whatever, it just, they're on the anti-tree thing. So I'm wondering if that's, so I'm kind of curious how that's gonna be handled. So they would have to go appeal, they're gonna put them back where they had previously had them removed. And so there's that. Okay, so the answer for that. The third one was our tree that we really like, that's very healthy in the front yard, that we love, provides lots of shade, beautiful tree. Look, trees are invasive to some extent, and it had wiped out the sidewalk before. I'd really like to learn about how to deep water the thing.
Yeah.
I would like to have it not do that. We removed the irrigation from the parkway, so we have none out there. I'd like to know about how to do that. I'm sure other people would too, because they removed it. The city had a turf removal for the city in the L&D areas, and so they're gonna remove turf. So I'm a little confused about how the parkways with the turf are gonna supply it when we've in the past had an effort to remove the turf. So what's gonna happen in those areas that there is no turf? What do I do if we don't have irrigation out there, or if we decide to do some native something? How do you take care of a tree and keep it healthy and happy and part of the family?
Sorry.
I'm curious to hear about that.
So our first Ask an Arborist series was on deep root watering like that, and how to put like a tree ring around your tree to get that deep root watering, or start, even if it's an established tree, start driving some of those roots further down. And when we've done turf removal projects, as part of the project, it's always spec'd out. As we put plants in, they're on a bubbler, and there's always one separate valve for the tree. So you might see like we call it Edifem, which is the drip tubing. That's specifically just on one valve for the trees, because they have different watering requirements than the plant material.
Okay.
So that's how we've been doing those.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna skip number 2, and we'll go right to number 3, which is our Performing Arts Center feasibility scope of work. Dan, you wanna present for us today?
So, I'm sorry you don't get Jason last, but you're stuck with me today, so.
I was looking for Jason, I was like, well, do I wait?
I'll try to walk you through this with some of the pizzazz that Jason would use, so.
Does anybody have the pizzazz that Jason has?
No, never. So just want to talk to you about the proposed scope of work for the Performing Arts Feasibility Study. The ask is that the Committee of the Whole provide us some feedback on this proposed scope of work for the Performing Arts Center Feasibility Study. And we do know that this obviously addresses Strategic Plan Goal 5. We brought that to you when we originally talked about this. The history and the background, our initial presentation to the Committee of the Whole was on Wednesday, June 8th, and we talked about the needs of performing arts venues. We talked about the value of Corona's historic Civic Center Theater and what we wanted to do there and how that looked. We talked about the evolution of Corona's arts organizations, how this might tie in with a downtown revitalization and future growth, and the desire to keep in the initial exploration within a reasonable financial means. So we spent some time talking about that last time. So coming back to you, we are talking about a scope of work for a feasibility study. We're talking about a baseline scope and then an alternative scope. So the first step in understanding this unique request, staff recommended going out and seeking a proposal for the feasibility study. Not only is this a low-risk way of assessing what could potentially be part of a larger project, but it allows for us to intentionally ask what is best for the city of Corona. The feasibility study would provide a fair, equitable, and transparent means to explore this question while engaging our community to understand their unique perspectives more fully. Of course, we want to know what it means from a larger regional standpoint, so we don't want to have something here that's duplicated. We don't want to have something that's not going to be utilized. We don't want you to make a big capital investment that way. But what could be our claim to fame? How could we be different? Where's the innovation here? Is the need met somewhere else? We need to look at the bigger picture before we get too far along in the process. We need to understand all of these items. Based on the feedback we received, we split our original ask into two phases. The first is this baseline phase of exploration to see if something like this is possible here in Corona. And we'll go through each of the components in the baseline phase in subsequent slides. And the second, or alternative scope, being a phase 2, if we want to start looking at the implementation or how that we might implement moving forward with this Performing Arts Center. So the proposed scope of work. So I want to go through the baseline study and talk about each of them. So the proposed scope of work is that we're asking for a market analysis and data map. This is to understand national and local trends and market analysis for municipally owned performing arts center. This data would be informed by the established service area, local assets, demographics, market factors, and barriers to success. The proposed scope of work, we would want an assessment of our historic civic center. So taking a critical look at how we use this facility. As you know, right now, we have some performances in there, but we also use it as a rental facility. Is that the best and highest use of that facility? Do we want to have that programmed all year long so that you would know that that theater is programmed with performing arts all year long and you would come to that theater to see in a more intimate venue, performing arts, and then there would be larger alternatives. So are we keeping up with our local demand? Is how we're using that theater really the best and highest use for the city? What is it like in comparison to other local theaters? What are the recommendations for sustainable operations? Is that something that we would do as a city? Is that something we would go to an outside contractor to come in and program that for us? So it's inventory, use trends, operation model, and then a case study comparison. So we know of some cities, and we've talked to some cities that have recently done performing arts centers, so we would want to bring those case comparisons to you. We want to make sure the consultant talked to us about other cities and what best practices are.
Are any of those local, Ann?
Relatively local is Temecula's. That's relatively new and relatively local. I mean, that would be something we would definitely look at. Our team is heading down to Temecula to go look and see how they're. No, not wine tasting. To go see how they're using their theater and meet with their operator that they use to manage their theater and performing arts.
And Rancho has one as well.
Mm-hmm. And the Lewis Theater is a beautiful theater to work with, and that's a completely programmed theater. So it does have city programming, but it is a completely programmed theater. It's not a rental facility.
Is that in Rancho?
Yes, it's Victoria Gardens.
Lewis and Company?
Yes,
Yeah.
Randall Lewis. So the proposed scope of work, we want to get with our stakeholders, we want to gather information from the community, we want to understand what their expectations are for entertainment venues. This data would help inform the market analysis and serve as a qualitative, give us some qualitative data and inform final recommendations. Folks included in that obviously would be the city council, leadership staff, performing arts groups, community developers, and residents.
I think before you go back, before you go on to the next one, I think this is the one I think that I know that, us going out for expert opinion, and yes, if we ask everybody what they want, everybody's gonna, whenever you deal with the government, I always tell you, never ask what people want, what they want from you, because they're always gonna ask for more. Or something else, that we have somebody that's an expert to look and find ways that something that fits what everybody needs, but maybe isn't perfectly designed, because you're gonna have some, monstrosity that won't be able to support itself. But you're able to have someone with the nuance to be able to look at what all the needs are for each one of these groups and say, how best can we put those pieces together? Somebody that's an expert in this, that really knows how to look at it.
Which is why we're proposing this in the scope of work. So you see that this is labeled item C, right? So A and B,
Sure.
work can, with C to be a whole scope. So we're looking at the trends, we're looking at the way we're using our current and existing assets,
Right.
we're hearing what people want. And it is the expert, this is why you go out to have the
What I don't-
consultant that integrates all of that
I
together.
don't want somebody just to parrot from those four bullets. I want them to interpret and then.
That is what we would pay them for. That is really the key piece. I mean, if it was just sort of doing this analysis, while we don't have a lot of time, we could do it ourselves.
Yeah.
The reason you bring somebody in is for that integration piece, right?
Perfect.
It's for that
Yep.
ability to balance and take that data and give you something usable moving forward.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Thank you.
So we also want to do a demand analysis and target audiences. So this is a really key part. We want to understand the demand. Like, is this demand a perceived demand or is this a real demand, right? You don't want to build something and then have nobody come. So we want to really understand what that demand is, and we want to understand kind of what does that look like? What are the types of entertainment? And what do people usually leave the city of Corona to go do? Do they usually leave for theater productions or symphony music? Or, what is that they leave the city for, that if we had this type of venue, we could keep them here in Corona? And then what opportunities are viable within the city? Because our wants and our capacity sometimes don't match up. So what are we actually capable of providing to them? So that is the baseline scope of work. That is the piece that we really want to send out now, and get that baseline piece taken care of. This is really the next step, which informs phase 2. So answer whether or not developing an additional performing arts venue within the city or renovating the historic Civic Center Theater to become the city's premier performing and visual arts center are possible and sustainable and within the best interest of the Corona community or a regional asset. What are the next steps in determining the feasibility for a performing arts center, and what specific questions need to be asked? So what's the infrastructure needs? What's the financing? How do we keep that going? Who operates it? Is it permanent? Is it temporary? All of those things inform that. So the proposed scope of work, we believe that our project deliverables will be that the consultant shall provide a written report that complies with the findings of each of the above sections, that the report will include appropriate graphs, illustration, and infographics as necessary, that the report shall be accompanied with appendices which provide detailed information. So if you want to geek out on all of the data, that you can go into the appendices and you can go in there and look at all of the raw data, not just the conclusion that the consultant came to, and that the findings and recommendations reflect the unique attributes of the city and Corona and incorporate the city's strategic plan initiatives.
One of the really interesting things that, and thank Councilmember Richards here for pulling out the 100-year-old plans from for the high school, that there was originally supposed to be a balcony that never got built. It's fully designed and everything else, and it was 176 seats. Yeah, it was interesting. So that's something to include as one of the
Absolutely.
evaluation points.
So what is the financial investment? So we will ask the consultant to provide a line item proposal for both phases of the study, so the council will have the opportunity to evaluate that and decide how you want to move forward. We believe that for phase one, it'll be between, just based on what we've bid out, this is just based on what we bid out on plans, is that that'll be between 100 and 150,000 for that baseline first phase. And then additional services or the potential phase two, the costs are to be determined. We'll get them back from the consultant, and by line, and you can say, I want to move forward with this, I don't want to move forward with that. We can take a look at that. So here's the timeline that we talked about, the exploration, we're seeking the direction from you. We'll go right into the RFP process. Then we would award the project and allocate the funding. And then we begin conducting the feasibility study. It decides to not work for me, like right at the very end.
Died on you.
It just said no.
Next one, please.
Thank you. So the options for you today are really to just take no action and say, thank you very much, thanks for all the information, and we feel like this is not something we want to move forward with. Or you can issue, you can ask staff to prepare the RFP for the feasibility study. And again, we think that moving forward with a feasibility study is a low-risk first step to understanding a really complex project. And any future steps that are outlined in that feasibility study obviously would need additional resources, and it could take several months for the feasibility study to be, up to a year for the feasibility study to be completed. Because what we do want is that real synthesis from the consultant that takes the information that they've gathered and really synthesizes it for us so that we can get some clear direction on how to move forward. And I had one last slide, which if you would do it, that would be great. So it's just back to the original ask. We're asking that you provide us some feedback on the scope of work, and let us know that we're headed in the right direction.
Okay. Ms. Newman, do you have any questions or comments, Connie? Good. Jim?
Yeah, I definitely support the feasibility study. I think the proposed scope of work in both phase one and phase two seem reasonable. Hoping that the results are something that we can think bigger and better than just resorting to the Civic Center Theater. I was out at Dos Lagos today with Don Kindred, and he was showing me some potential opportunities, and like that really excites me. The historic theater does not excite me, because I think thinking bigger is going to open up a lot more opportunities. But I do believe that the study is going to help dictate whether that's true or if that's just emotion. So we definitely have to do the study.
Sure. Tom?
I'm a big fan of the historic Civic Theater. Just want to
Okay, you don't want to tear it down like Councilmember Steiner does?
throw that out there.
Tear it down. Don't start that.
That's rumors starting.
That's what I heard. That's what I heard.
And we did check out the blueprints this Monday, and they're 100-year-old this year. The blueprints are.
This week.
So, and we will post some pictures pretty soon of the blueprints. Took many pictures. I'm with Jim. I support the feasibility study 100%. I just have one question, and you may know it or not know it. Is there a dollar amount, just a rough order of magnitude, like a guess of how much one would cost?
A performing arts center? It would all depend on how big and where.
Place.
$3 million, just like the fire
But
station.
you have an existing building that you can convert.
Yeah, land, there is no estimate at this point.
There's no estimate at all.
Tough crowd.
Be $1 billion.
What did you think?
I also would like to just throw it out there that the possibility of finding a big donor that we can name it after, if we can find a big donor. And I have one in mind.
I like
No, gosh, no. I'm not on that level.
Councilmember Richards is paying for the next.
You heard it here first.
And that's a rumor that I'm
Jackie?
So I just have a question about, so I'm in support of a feasibility study, but as I understand this phase 1, phase 2, I'm wondering, are we opening ourselves up to saying we support the feasibility study, but phase 1, and then there's a pause on whether or not we're gonna continue to phase 2? And the reason I ask is for this reason, because it seems like, you know, the actual possibility of a feasibility of a performing arts center which is the thing that would come in phase 2, could be a big defining moment as to whether or not this thing is feasible. So let me see if I can explain myself. If there were a development partner or a partner, if there were a potential for a private-public partnership to create a performing arts center, then that would change whether or not something like this is feasible, because now there is interest and possibly capital to get it done. But that isn't coming in until phase 2. So are we going to pursue a feasibility study, go through phase 1, and then when we're done with phase 1 say, and then we axe it? Is there a possibility that we stop there when there could be a potential for a P3 partnership?
So
But that's not until phase 2.
that is not our intention, that is not what we are recommending. What we are recommending is that you look at where you are in the context of the region, that you identify demand. What we want to make sure is that you have that basic demand. Because if you have money, right, it's always, whether that be a P3 partnership or that's something else,
Right.
if you have money, you can always build a performing arts center, but,
Right.
so it's always feasible, right?
Yeah, if it's-
But the real thing that you're finding in the first phase
Right.
is, do you have the demand for this?
Right.
There are lots of folks who say, yes, there's lots and lots of demand. Well, let's just get all the data that shows you that.
Yeah.
So you feel comfortable then moving to the next phase. We will ask the consultants to bid on the second phase.
Okay.
So when we bring it to you,
Yeah.
we will say, you know, here's if you just want to do phase 1.
Yeah.
And we think that's between like 100 and 150,000. Here is, if you want to go into phase 2 right away, like if you want the consultant just to roll right out of phase 1 into phase 2, here's the line item budget of what they said phase 2 would be.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're getting a complete picture, and we're not building this as a phase 1, and then when we're done with phase 2, there's a new consideration as to whether or not to, because we need to know the rest of
I
it.
think there is.
There is, but it's your discretion to do
Yeah,
that.
well, I mean,
not
there's
ours.
two pieces that, I mean, if you're this private partner this with us, I would say, okay, if there's a need, I mean, if there's a need and it can be busy, then sure, I would like to partner with the city and pay for this.
I don't think you're hearing me right, and
No,
what
I
Roger
am.
just said is making me feel uncertain.
No,
If
but-
it's up to our discretion whether or not we're gonna actually explore phase 2, then that's an incomplete picture. I
That-
wanna make sure that we're getting both phases.
Let me finish. So what I'm saying is that that first step is, is there a need? The idea that we all think there's a need, but
Correct.
is there a real need?
Right,
And then if there is a real need,
yeah.
then you move on to phase 2.
That's the if that is making me
If.
uncomfortable.
Because you don't know that answer, and there's a reason why we're doing phase 1.
Correct.
You wouldn't move to phase 2 unless there was a need.
But there are parts in phase 2 that could inform whether or not it's feasible.
Could affect phase
Well,
1.
and then when we go to award the contract, you have the option saying, I want this to be a part of the baseline set of services. That's why we're giving you sort of a cafeteria plan on the phase 2 options. So if you, or you could say, I want to do it all. I want to make sure that we do the whole
We wanted to keep the-
project. We were trying to be sensitive, I guess,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
the comments last time of that
Yeah.
the cost was a little.
Agreed.
So you have the option, we'll ask the bidders, when we put out the RFP, to bid on phase 2. So
Okay.
you will know the cost of phase 2. It will be a part of their work if we choose to select it. It will be a part of the award of the contract.
But to be clear, it's coming back to us on whether or not it's moving forward to a phase 2.
No,
If you
so,
award the first phase that way, yes. Or you could say at the award of contract that you want to award the whole thing, in which case we would do all the work and come back to you with the full analysis.
Jacob, do you understand what I'm
I have the
asking?
same concern that you
can
do.
just tell us to do both right now.
Right.
Well, if we don't know the price of the second one and we don't know the answers to the first one, no.
That's the whole
But I
point.
am concerned that there are elements in phase two that will inform whether or not this thing is feasible. And
Would
then
you
if we
like
don't
some of those
understand-
elements to be put into phase one?
Correct, that would be,
All right.
Because we
that, there's.
welcome that direction if that.
Let me
Okay.
think on that.
All right, you want to come back?
Yep.
All right.
Let me
fine.
find parts I like.
I think Councilmember Casillas and I are thinking the same lines. I'm concerned about approving potentially $150,000 to find out that phase two could cost $2 million. I'm very concerned because that will tell me that I don't know if we even want to go with phase one, because phase two, which is the nuts and bolts of it, is going to be very expensive. So do I understand this correctly, that you're going to send this, that based on the information today, you're going to send this out to RFP, and hopefully we're guesstimating correctly on the price of phase one, but also when it comes back to us, they will give us an estimated cost, not an RFP, on phase two?
Correct.
Because I'm imagining that they could come back and this price point could be good, and then they say, but in order to give you a complete picture, which would be phase two, it could be X. And that dollar amount could be very high, and it would scare me off of phase one.
So what it will be is that the first phase will include this scope, right? So they'll give us a bid on that. Then we'll send this all out as the bid. And then they line item each one so that you can pick, like a cafeteria's plan, say, I want all of one, and I want number 2 and number 3 of phase 2 right now. And so I'm gonna make the bid for the total cost of one, which we think will be $150,000, and then the $25,000 for item, I'm just making this
Yeah,
up,
yeah, yeah.
please don't
Yeah,
hold
yeah,
me to
yeah.
that. But the $25,000 for item 2 and the $50,000 for item 3. And that's the kind of bid that I wanna award right now.
I'm comfortable.
Or you can say, I'm looking at the cost for each one of these line items, and I'm comfortable with awarding both phase 1 and phase 2 right now. So those are all of your options. The key for us was to make sure that you knew exactly
Yeah.
what these line items were on phase 2 when you were getting ready to award the bid. So you could make the choice at that point with full knowledge financially of what it was gonna cost you before you made a decision.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, the only other concern that I had would be on item C, the proposed base scope of work, where it talks about the stakeholders. And obviously, city council, leadership staff, performing art groups in the communities, community developers. But it's that residents piece that I'm a little concerned about, and my concern is the sample size. So if the only people that sign up that are residents are also part of these performing art groups, it's gonna skew that data. Everybody that we talk to wants a performing arts center, but that could be a small number. So I'm concerned about the sample size of residents that they talk to, as far as being a good depiction of residents. There may be 50 residents that are like, yep, I love it. There may be thousands of residents that say, nope, don't want it, I got other needs.
So what I will tell you is that we're getting very good at surveying. We're learning a lot about how to survey and all of that. The city manager's office, with all of the surveys that they've done, the community surveys and all of that. So we can build into the scope of work, hearing your concerns, exactly what that looks like. I mean, we can do a pulse survey, but if we have a sample size that we want to say, you know, I know that on some other surveys, we've said if you don't get 600, then we'll go back out. We can talk about a sample size in the RFP of residents that we want and kind of where we want those residents, you know, that might be something that we mail out to certain zip codes so that it can't necessarily get skewed just to one particular group. You know, you do the best you can with a survey. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
But we can try lots of different modalities to try to get as much of a diverse hearing on that. And we'll do pop-ups at parks, we'll do stuff at our events, we'll do stuff by mail, we'll do stuff on the website. So we'll try to the best of our ability to get as much as we can there. And we'll work with the consultant about what's worked in other communities.
Yeah, I know that you said that part of the scope is gonna be all of the data, all of the raw data, not just their opinion. So I'd be interested to make sure that all 5 districts are represented with their opinion. I myself am not so excited about a performing arts center until I see the numbers for phase 2.
Sure. And we're gonna see the numbers for all of them.
Yes, ma'am, the first time I bring it to you.
Okay.
I
cool,
promise.
Cool. Just the word choices that everyone's using are making me, okay.
I see this as, I mean, and I thank you for clarifying that, because I kind of see it the same way that, we need to know if, it's like building a pool in your backyard, you know, you ask your family, are you guys gonna go in the pool? It says, yes, we're gonna go in the pool. And do they actually go in the pool? No, they don't go in the pool, right, Tom? But you gotta do this part first. You don't design the pool and you don't design it and go through all the machinations of having the thing and then ask people if they're gonna use it. So this is perfect. This is exactly, and especially if our goal is to find a partner, a community partner, you need to offer this information to them as backup, because no one's gonna say, you know, I guarantee that the Randall Lewis Center didn't get built because Randall Lewis went, you know, I like my name on buildings, let's just put it in a performing arts center.
You met him, it may have been.
I have.
May have actually been that way.
But it's this is the perfect way, this is the way we should do it. And I get the concerns on the alternative scope, because, yeah, if you're doing site analysis and infrastructure needs, you could spend $1 million on that if you were gonna do design and site evaluations and how far you're gonna go down, initial studies and due diligence, and yeah, you could spend a fortune. But if you do this first part, then then you can actually say, okay, where are the options? Where should it go? How should it be built? How big is, that's all things that are gonna be pushed from this point. And I think we need to answer this question flat out. This is not even a hesitation for me to get this question answered.
Mayor, can I just interject really quick? Last week, we had a presentation from WRCOG on some of their creepy data. And I was thinking about that because it said, where do people leave to go? I wonder if we could utilize some of their creepy data on knowing where Coronans are going for their
I bet you the data can tell you who's going to the Lewis Center and where they're coming from.
yeah.
That's actually what I'm wondering, because Anna said that the Temecula place and the
Randall Lewis.
Randall Lewis,
Please, come on.
they're both new, right?
No.
Not-
Temecula's
not-
new, Randall Lewis has been 10, 12 years.
Yeah, 10 years.
I'm curious to see how
Sugarstrom, that's probably about the same, 10 years old, 12.
but the Temecula one's new,
Newish,
or newish.
within the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So I'm curious after the wine tasting tour,
That's really not rumor
not to start any rumors, how well they're doing, because they're the newest and they're the closest to us, so I think they will be a very key indicator. I think the Randall Lewis one will be a good indicator too, because it's so close to us. I think Segerstrom's just too big compared to us.
Well, they have 2 buildings there too.
And they're a very wealthy family. They would build a building to compete with the Irvine company. So, but those two, what are those places called?
Performing Arts Center.
Performing arts centers will be key indicators.
We'll make sure that the consultant's aware of that.
Can I ask about back to the resident survey, because I want to make sure I heard correctly, or if it's the will of the council. Are you looking for a statistically valid by district survey? Because that could be very costly. Is
That
something you
I think
want?
is gonna be really hard to do.
Well,
There's
I
people
think
just
that
don't-
raw data will help tell us. I mean, there may be folks in District 5 that are pro performing arts and in District 3 that are not. And so I just, all that data will play as to where a potential site could go. And then, we kind of look, I just want to make sure all that data is included, because if the residents that are responding to this are all overwhelmingly from one district, then I have some concerns that just because that district is interested in it, maybe the whole city isn't interested in it. So I think the raw data will help tell us, where folks are from that are yes or no for something like this.
But I would add that going to a performing arts center requires access
Access,
to
exactly.
money and that you can spend. So there will be definitively people, it will be skewed in our city. Who will say that something like this is valuable?
Well, 'cause they have
Will be someone
experience
who
with it.
has expendable money.
There's key triggers, so it's once the triggers are met, or the barriers are met to build one, then you build it. And with 170,000 citizens, I think it's a very legitimate question. Are we there?
I think Dr. Turner's point about, we're getting good at surveying, that's a good thing. I think the data though, getting maybe WR COGS creepy data, getting like credit card receipts, stuff like, not receipts, but they said that the credit card reports, will show, like, it can be pinged by zip code, right? So like, where are we spending our money? And if our folks are spending our money, or surrounding folks are spending their money on going to something like this, then that would be supportive.
I think we have a segment of our population that has probably never been to a performing arts center because it's not near them, it's not an experience they have. So I think that, I don't know if I'm not fully on board with that it needs to be an equal piece report from each place, because I think basically if we cited a performing arts center and we can show that it would have interest, that it wouldn't draw interest. And I can tell you from the Randall Lewis Center, they're people that are attending, going to that performing arts center are local people, and it's because it was there, and they wouldn't have been going to Ontario or to some other place, but they're going there because it's there. And the same thing with Temecula. Temecula's performing arts center is next to their city hall, which is next to downtown, and they're down to their old town area, which doesn't have a lot of housing, but people travel there. And
I'm just concerned about, considering something that only a more affluent resident is interested in.
My point is that there may be people that would express an interest, but I think that it would draw in people that didn't even know that was an option for them. That's all. Okay.
Okay,
Clear enough?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep, okay.
Let's make sure there wasn't an expectation. We're on
All right,
so thank
awesome.
you.
Do we have any members of the public that would like to
We
speak?
have one resident that wants to speak.
Okay.
Probably won't be surprised I have a different take on this. Segerstrom was opened in 1986. Lewis Center was opened in 2006. I didn't find an opening date for Temecula, but it was funded in 2013. These are all doable projects for us this size. But what I don't understand is why this isn't being brought up in the context of the downtown plan. I mean, you could build one of these. We have open vacant space down there that would accommodate this. If you look at the Temecula, you could build 2 of those down there. So, we have space down there. We have an entire city block that's basically empty. The only one on it's the bank, and they've been talking about moving for 5 or 8 years. So, we could do this. And it would be, this would be a thing that would make a downtown a downtown. We're doing a downtown plan that's kind of pie in the sky, thinking about all the things that we could, maybe possibly, something might possibly maybe happen somewhere in the future. We're gonna design it now. Or you could just, sort of grab the thing by the cojones and make it happen. If you did a performing arts center, you got the library and you have a lab moving in, that's a downtown. That is economic development. You would have things pop up down there. And then you have the standards from the downtown strategic plan that would guide that building. But you're deciding that you're gonna have a downtown. What I don't wanna see is yet one more time that, we blue sky this thing and go, well, we could do this, we could do that, and we could have this special interest and that special interest. Again, sucking away investment in downtown, which is why downtown is downtown the way it is now, because we've propped up this development and that development to the detriment of downtown. We've taken emphasis away. We've decided that it's not really as important as we want to pretend that it is. So you can make a commitment now to say, we're gonna do this, hire somebody to say, we're gonna do this. Come up with some plans, come up with some proposals, come up with some ways to do it. And then, instead of just casting our future onto the vagaries of this concern. I don't really wanna hear your arguments, I'm speaking right now.
Okay.
So, if we can decide what we wanna do and be a grown-up city, or we can just, consult this thing to death over and over again. Just decide that we wanna have a performing arts center, that we're just as capable and we're just as cultured, and we're just as forward-looking as any other city that has one, and let's just do this thing and say, we're gonna look at it seriously instead of just pie in the sky. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Could you repeat that process again of when the RFPs or when the RFP goes out, when it's due, and when it's awarded and when the first phase is supposed to be completed?
So, all we have on this, my clicker isn't
Can you go back
working.
to that slide, please?
Thank you. Oop. Back to the one with
One
the,
more.
thank you. So, we've done our exploration, that's completed. We're bringing this seeking of direction to the committee of the whole today. We are hoping to have the RFP out by the first quarter of fiscal year '23, meaning January of fiscal year '23. And that we would bring, we know how long that process takes for us. So we would bring, once those bids were evaluated, those proposals were evaluated, we would bring it back for award of project, meaning they would decide the scope of both phase one and then what portions of phase two or all of phase two that they wanted to include in that. And that would be in the second quarter of fiscal year '23. And then we would begin conducting that. Usually 60 days after the award of the bid is when we can meet with the contractor and begin awarding that. So you're looking at, let's see, quarter one, I'm doing the math in my head, not so good.
You're doing good. Got it.
June, about probably you're looking at next summer to begin.
And then did I hear they had a year to do that?
We don't know, we'll have to see what comes back with the proposal, but it
Sooner
could
the
be up
better.
to a year.
I would recommend on the RFPs to let them give you the timeline, because I think they'll always, a lot of times, like, almost with price, like, a lot of times either give you the price and the time, the speed, right? And let them give you the time, right? Because if you tell them, hey, you have a year to do it, they'll take the year, right? But if you let them come back in their proposal, they'll do that as part of their price, so we do it this fast and this fast.
We generally do
That's
that.
good point.
Oh, yeah, I don't know why I thought I heard a year there, got it.
Well, I'm estimating that based upon the plans and the work
Got it.
that we've done.
No
Yeah.
problem, thank you.
Okay, great. All right, move on to number 2, which is our graffiti abatement update. And looks like Moses, you're going to present that to us.
Talking about 30 minutes. Be quick.
Okay.
Alrighty, so I just wanted to, will it work?
It works for you, it doesn't work for me.
Alright, so I just wanted to come back, again, on another program that we talked about a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, on the graffiti plan that we proposed back then, and provide some updates. So, right off the bat, I just want to kind of touch on what we did last fiscal year. And I also, right under that, that second bullet kind of compares what we had done prior to. So last year, we removed 246,000 square feet of graffiti. Year prior, we were at 100,000, approximately. And we also completed 8,500 C-Click fix reports last fiscal year. The way they were reported was through C-Click fix, resident reports that come in through phone calls to the office. We also have park staff reporting them as well. We have been proactively documenting our hotspots and having our contractors hit those hotspots on a regular basis without having to create a work order, just having them automatically go to those particular areas that we've been noticing repeated tagging. And again, just real quick, so the difference between, the graffiti was always there, so that's the difference you see in the 100,000 and the 246. It's just we're actually getting to all of it now, so it's not sitting there. So we're keeping up the good fight. So right now we've got a quicker response. It is, depending on when it's reported and acknowledged, it's about a 48-hour turnaround. The only issue on that is if it's reported on a Saturday or Saturday evening, it's Monday morning that we're actually getting to that acknowledgement, getting the work order out to the contractor, and getting back out there. We do have 2 full-time crews here on site daily, Monday through Saturday. And we have, because last year we did so much graffiti, we actually increased our budget for this fiscal year to $300,000 to actually keep up with the current graffiti that we're removing. There's a picture of some of the bigger pieces. Again, this is one of our proactive spots that we try to get to. It takes a little coordination. This is right here off the railroad tracks, off the Pruning and Removals.
How many hotspots do we have? That they just show up? I know like Santana Skate Park,
Yeah.
but how many hotspots do we
Actually, it's
have?
been pretty good lately.
I'd have to get you that number, but off the top of my head, I'm saying probably a dozen to 20. Like Fifth Street alleys, Fifth Street Alley is one of them. We've got the area of Sierra Vista. We hit all our sports parks every Friday proactively, just because we know we're going into the weekend and the sports groups are going to be there.
Yeah.
So every Friday, one of those crews is dedicated to hitting those sports parks. The skate park is one of them.
It's really tough. Santana's been really good lately. The last month or so, it's been significantly died down.
Yeah, and I think by us getting there on a regular basis, it's deterring that activity. Those walls along the 91 freeway, that's another one that we're trying to proactively hit. So all these spots that we're just capturing data on, that we're just really trying to hit them proactively.
Number I don't wanna see grow, unfortunately.
Yeah. So here's just a picture of the crews. They're clearly identifiable. They'll be out, depending what kind of work they're doing. They got their vests on, they got their trucks, they're marked. It says their magnets, contractor in the city of Corona. So people do see them out and about. And yeah, great company we've been working with, very responsive. We have a great relationship with them, similar to West Coast. Talk to them daily. So great company. They also provide color matching. So they do sandblasting, water blasting, and paint. As you can see, they do their best to color match as close as they can. Not 100% perfect, but it's always in the same family of color, and kind of keeps things looking aesthetically a little nicer. And
They mow the lawn too.
I didn't notice that till you.
That looks good.
Oh, those guys
We're
do
trying to
all.
make it look real fancy for you.
That's perfect.
It's even sunnier in the
It's a big
The
little
skinny
picture.
guys.
Smile on the second one, not on the first one.
Exactly.
Catch that. The other thing they're doing is they're blocking things off, so if they're not just doing like a rectangle, they're trying to block it off so it looks like a full match. Here is the work orders that we collected for last fiscal year. And I want to show you, so you're going to see what happened in June. So what happened in June was, again, this gets back to us just being proactive and not waiting for it to come in. We've tasked our park rangers when they're out and about, if they see graffiti, to please create a work order. So they are self-reporting as well, so that we get to it quicker.
Yeah, if I can just add into that, this doesn't mean that there's that much more graffiti, it's that much more graffiti that we're taking off walls.
Yeah.
And so in some cases, you could have the same amount out there, we're just getting to it faster, and so.
Did we get fully staffed with park rangers in June? They're like, good
Ranger
Lord.
Bear, I think alone is at about half of those.
There's a guy named Ranger Bear.
Ranger Bear, that's the tag, just to make your bear. Say thank you every single time.
So I do want to say there's a couple different things. I mean, one is that we're working, we work really closely with the Flex team. And so sometimes you'll see graffiti action in the city hit peaks and valleys based upon things that are happening with folks in town. So they're tagging wars and things that are going on like that. So you can see spikes during that period. But we've tried to be really proactive. So I think this is a marriage of both of those things. We've had some spikes with activities that were going on in the city, but we've also tried to get really proactive. And I don't know if you remember, but when we initially brought this to you, it took us 7 to 10 days to get down a piece of reported graffiti. And so with 2 guys, right?
Yeah.
And having to go back to the courtyard and getting the paint and trying to match the paint. I mean, they were lovely, dedicated guys who are doing great jobs in our parks right now, but they just couldn't keep up with this. I mean, this is a whole different level. And we were really worked closely with the police department during those activities where we were having those tagging wars to get right on it. We got with that Flex team because the quicker we could get it down, the quicker, that behavior and exposure stops.
Great. So that's a spike, why you see that. And to kind of piggyback off of what Ann said, I know Chief Newman's on the line, just want to, as Ann mentioned. So these hotspots that we have been working with, I've been able to work with the Flex team. I apologize, I was gonna try and get the data and I didn't have time to include it in this presentation, but we have made a handful of arrests, or I haven't. But PD has,
Moses says it all.
Are
He does
you
everything.
speaking on the side?
Different hat, that's a different hat.
but PD has made some arrests,
Love that.
on these areas that we've been able to work with them on. And it's been really good because we've been able to go through the restitution process and recapture some of that. So those are the fun stories that, come out of this, that we've been able to capture successes. And as Ann mentioned, by having this, we've been able to put 2 of our park staff full-time back into parks to help out with deferred maintenance. So it's a win-win. They're getting to trash quicker, they're getting to fixing repairs on work orders that, typically would have been pending quicker. So it's just been a really, really great program for us. And we've got positive feedback, especially from the sports leagues. Like I said, us hitting them every Friday has been a really big help for them because, they got parents showing up for Saturday morning
Yeah,
for
it's
soccer and
awful.
baseball, and they're, the bathrooms are filling in free of tagging. This is the same chart, just in square footage. Again, so that's why you see that sharp spike in June, is because we started really hitting a lot of this stuff proactively. And that concludes my presentation. Again, I just want to say thank you guys. This was another, right behind the urban forest management plan, this was another great program. And thank you guys for supporting us in this.
It's good
I'm
stuff.
excited to keep it going. We've been doing some fun things out there, and it seems like we're going in the right direction.
Jim, anything?
Ian, a few years ago, I think, is when we started seeing these real big spikes, and it was because we didn't have our gang task force, and the gangs taking advantage of that. So I was curious. I'm glad you said the chief's on the line, and I'm also glad that Jacob, you said that these aren't additional incidents, but they're just being reported more. And I question that a little bit because it does seem like there's more than there's been in the past. But over the last 3 years or so, it's
both.
But I am curious. I'm glad some arrests have been made, but I am curious if the reestablishment of our gang task force has been able to. Well, you said a handful of people have been arrested. That's great, but has it been able to do a little bit more than that when it comes to minimizing graffiti?
It's a good question. The chief is not on the line any longer. He,
Thanks, Chief.
we got moved out of rotation, so he had a.
No problem. But I'm guessing the answer is going to be, we're making arrests where we can. But I was hoping that by the reestablishment of the gang task force that we would see less and less of this gang graffiti going back. That's all I got. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
You guys are doing great, really.
On one hand, I'm really impressed. I really feel like graffiti was a big problem, and it was recognized, and the solution was proposed, and it's been a couple years now that you guys have been tackling this, and you report back, and you're honest, and you're straightforward, and we really see a full picture. And then on the other hand, I'm really depressed that knuckleheads think it's cool to do this to our city, and we had to increase our budget $300,000, righteously so. But that's $300,000 that could be well spent otherwhere. And just these kids that are doing this,
They don't care.
they need to be on a different path. So, but to you guys, congratulations.
Yeah, and we're looking for everything. I mean, some of it's obviously the large pieces that everybody sees. Others are, marker on the bench or, in a bathroom stall. We're just removing all of it.
I mean, I stopped when I got elected. Not to start any rumors.
Jackie?
I think graffiti is like trees. They make us feel different about our community. When we see graffiti, they make us feel poorly about our community, and when we see trees, they make us feel really good about our community. So I'm really happy that we decided to do this program this way. And while it is more money, I'm also happy to spend it in this area because it makes us just feel better about Corona.
Yeah.
So, good job.
Thank you.
I'd love to see a way for us that on those arrests, we could somehow make them clean up their own graffiti. I think that would be.
Justice, you mean?
That would be awesome. Also want to point out that I told you when you requested it, you were gonna need more money. And I love it when I write, sometimes, because it's very few times. But I'm certainly glad that I've seen your trucks out a bunch. I've seen the crews out working, and I'm always very happy to see them removing stuff. I know that I've spent a lot of time, reporting C-Click Fix as well, and I'm always happy that they get acknowledged and taken care of right away. So 6 days, they're up to 6 days a week now, according to your presentation, which is a lot of graffiti removal. And even the square footage and stuff, that's a lot of time driving around our city. I almost want to ask them what they think and be like, I was just here cleaning this yesterday, and here it is again. But I'm glad that they're doing it, and I'm also happy to spend the money because I don't want to see a bunch of graffiti.
Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Casillas. It's a visceral reaction when you see it. So I know I started every single night. I would go to Santana Park, take my little scooter down, and ride around the buildings, each one of the buildings, and then come back and do my little reports.
Can I get pictures of you on the scooter?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was.
For a while, he was a suspect.
It was.
Then we realized.
We're like, what can you show this person or the
Newman on the phone.
Yeah.
Made it harder when you stopped signing your work.
But I will say though that how fast that we're reacting to this stuff, I think is making a difference because, there was a period of time at Santana that they were hitting every single, anything that was, more than 2 feet was getting just nailed week after week after week. And you guys are on it so fast that I think it's discouraged it because then, I saw the tags were a little bit more elaborate. And then when we were getting them off a little faster, they were a little more sloppy and fast, and now they're just not. They've moved on somewhere else. So, and I'm sorry, Chief's not on, but I know that the Flex team guys are spending time, in those places where they see issues. I know that I saw them more at Santana and Citrus, where we were reporting a lot of graffiti at weird times. I'm trying to see if they pick somebody up, and it sounds like they did. So that's a good thing. Okay. Thank you so much. Do we have any public comments?
Yes, we do.
I had a question about, there's always the margin of, how far we're gonna go and where we're gonna do things. And I know there's been, thank God, some of the private property areas that were just as much blighted as their public property. The wall down along Buchanan, by the townhomes down there, in that particular. I think another margin that has to get addressed, and I've heard that we don't fix it, is the drainages, the washes and all that.
The channels.
The channels, I mean, that's the biggest canvas ever, and it seems like a free fire zone.
So I've been working with Riverside County Flood Control on getting them. They're obviously not, unfortunately, as quick as we are, but they are open to working with us on that. So if there's areas that are reported, then we'll work with them on getting it abated.
They've reacted to some of the calls that I've made to them.
Yeah, they've done great with me
Areas of
too.
District 4, so they just need to be notified over and over and over again, and we gotta get the public, message out to the public, here's the information for you to report it to Riverside County.
Yep.
It works.
It's
just not as quick, like you said, Moses.
Well, if there was a way that somebody could report it to you, and then you report it to them, then that's one stop, because it's in the city. And I don't think a lot of people really go, oh, that's a flood control property. They're just like, there's graffiti, turn it in as graffiti, and then you guys sort it. That's kind of one of the reasons why C-Click Fix works so well.
Yeah.
Because nobody else knows where the hell anything is in City Hall, and you guys do, and then you sort it out, and it's an efficient kind of a sorting process that makes it work really well.
We can add some stuff to our website, and if it is reported through C-Click Fix, our office will, forward the message on to Riverside County Flood Control and let them know that, hey, there's tagging in this area, and we'll work with them on that.
It seemed like a way that, there seems like there's gotta be some way that we could work together and say, hey, look, if you can't get out here and handle it, can we handle it? Or, maybe do, a little junior version of what, Aaron's done with Norco. We can administer this, since you can't do it, we have the facilities to do it, this is important to us, and we'll handle it for them, just as a contractor almost.
And the city has actually handled some very vulgar type messages or pictures in our flood control channels that aren't our responsibility, but because of the nature of the graffiti.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, on to our last item, and last but not certainly least is our City of Coronel's local roadway safety plan. And our city traffic engineer will present the report.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. I have a special guest today, and I'm happy to share what we have. So last year, the city was awarded with a $135,000 grant from Caltrans to start a local roadway safety plan. This is kind of like a, what was it before?
Oh yeah, it's systemic safety analysis report.
So it's kind of almost like a Vision Zero type thing, like how can we get our city safer? And then this will also help us get future funding through grants. Kim Deacon was our selected firm, and with me today is Daryl DePoncier, practice. And he's going to share an overview of the local roadway safety plan, and then I will also share the next steps after this is complete. So today we're going to, like I said, do an overview of the project, what it entails, the purpose of why do we even need it. He's also going to share the citywide safety background and trends, as well as showing you some emphasis areas and some potential countermeasures that we can apply for grants, and then, hopefully get them going in the next couple of years, along with our next steps, and then discussion for you guys. So Carol, take it away.
All right, so the local roadway safety plan is a program that was initiated by the Federal Highway Administration, and it is built off what they call their safe systems approach, which is founded on the shared responsibility for roadway safety. So as the roadway owners, operators, the city has a certain role in roadway safety. The drivers have a role, the pedestrians have a role, the cyclists have a role. So we all have to work together in contributing to safety. So we'll talk about a little bit how that all plays together. In California, Caltrans administers the program, and they've actually set the establishment of a local road safety plan as a requirement for any city or county that wants to be eligible moving forward for highway safety improvement program funding. So it's organized by Caltrans. The idea is we really want to look systemically at safety across the city. So we're not necessarily going to say, oh, there's a fatal crash over here and there was some crashes over here and chase those all down. We're looking more at the higher level. What are the factors that are involved in these crashes, and what are the roadway conditions that seem to lead to them the most, and how do we best address those things so we're not responding to things or waiting for people to get hurt before we address the problem. We're identifying the problem proactively, and then we're looking for solutions to fix it. So as we move forward with this program, as we get this finished, this is going to really determine what the city is going to want to prioritize for looking for the Highway Safety Improvement Program funds, for other funding programs that move forward, and how you maybe want to implement things in your own maintenance cycles and make updates to your roadways moving forward, your own design standards, all of those good things. So the other factor here is that unlike most of the safety plans, like the systemic analysis reports we were talking about before, engineering is just one of the factors. So we also, because of that shared responsibility, need to have some focus on the education, the enforcement, emergency response, and emerging technology is another E that we have in there that Caltrans has started to adopt. So how do we bring all of those factors together to make the culture of safety a little bit better in the city? So we need to work on the roadways so that when people make mistakes, the outcomes are better. But we also need to work with the drivers and our law enforcement, our schools, everything, just to really bring that culture at home. And we have some good news on that front that I'll share as we move forward, but that's kind of our goal. So as we look through all the crash data, we did a pretty robust effort. We analyzed every single intersection and roadway segment in the entire city. We developed a whole crash profile for each one. We looked at what kind of crashes were occurring, how severe were they, how do they compare to other intersections and segments in the city. And we used that data to really get at what are the core factors, what are the commonalities that go through them, what can we address that's going to have the biggest impact, the soonest, kind of lower hanging fruit ideas. And those strategies that we developed encompass specific case studies. So we looked at particular locations that seemed to have interesting patterns that we could root out some of those factors. We looked at a pretty detailed policy review in the city for different programs and things that we can move forward in. We looked at potential enforcement activities, all kinds of things like that. And those all came out in a toolbox. So nothing in the plan is a given project that we're gonna go and fix this roadway and do the following things, but it's, here's a toolbox of things that we wanna address at that systemic high level. And that allows the city to have that flexibility as well when you're going for funding to build projects that suit whatever the opportunities that are available to you. So the process of doing this, like I said, we did that detailed analysis, we went through it. We also had a pretty significant stakeholder engagement process through this. So it's not a public engagement process. What we're looking for in the stakeholder engagement is people with particular expertise that come in outside of the traffic engineering world. So we wanted to have some representation from law enforcement, from emergency responders, fire, public health, bicycle pedestrian advocates, all those folks that have different experience to bring to the table, and local experience in Corona, so they can give us that bit of input, the stuff we don't see in the crash data, because we don't see our near misses, we don't see the locations that I'm just not going to go to because I hate this, it's not safe, all that kind of stuff. So that's the good information that we get from the stakeholders. And then we put together the draft plan, and then working right now, presenting it to you, letting everybody know what's going on. We have some funding programs coming up. The city needs to explore what kind of things we're going to go after. And then we finalize the plan. But that's not the end of this. The whole purpose of this is that it's an ongoing process. So once the plan's done, we're working on implementing it. We need to keep monitoring what's happening with safety so we can evaluate what's working, what isn't working so well, make those pivots. And then the ultimate idea is this would eventually turn into the foundation for your Vision Zero plan, because you'll have the information you need to understand the level of investment you have to make to get to that Vision Zero, which is consistent with the state's committed to, and keep you guys in line with everybody else. So after a few cycles of monitoring, the plan's in effect for 5 years, at which point you would need to update the plan and take a new approach.
And that Caltrans would continue funding that?
So far they have, yes.
So the map we're showing here is just showing you where the collisions, particular intersections, are concentrated in the city. So you won't be too surprised that they're most concentrated where your highest traffic volumes are. That's pretty much what we expect. But the purpose of looking at this is this really helps you understand where those bigger investments may be needed to tackle some of the safety challenges, because those high volume locations are also where the solutions are going to be the most expensive. So when we're looking at really big dollar fixes, those are where you want to focus. But looking at the map, you can also see just scattered all over the place, there's these sort of random seeming crashes that happen all over the place. And you can't chase each one of those. So that's where we need those lower cost systemic interventions. Some of them are pretty basic things that you can just do citywide as you update signs and update your stripings, repaving, all that kind of thing, and take care of them as you go. And those will sort of bring all those numbers down as well. So you tackle both at the same time, and that gives you a better outcome. It's a little harder to see, but there's also, you'll see some of the roadways have colors on them. That's where you have crashes that are occurring not at intersections, but at driveways or just rear ends or things that happen. Those ones we don't want to ignore either. There's way fewer of them, but they tend to be more severe because we do have higher speeds there. Sometimes they're more likely to be pedestrians or bicyclists that get hit. So those are all important factors for us to look at as well. So really quick before we move on to the next one, so this is just this is a numbers thing. It's number of collisions, and thank you for mentioning the in between intersections and things, because there's a pretty famous spot in District 1 and on Hidden Valley where there seems to be I'm really curious about what we can do from an engineering standpoint, because it's steep, it turns, people speed, and how would you characterize, and I don't know if you're familiar with the area I'm talking about, but I know that Mr. Compu is, and so is Rosie, but whether or not, how would you address something like that?
We can let him finish it. I
Sure,
think you're
sure.
taking my actually
Perfect,
final.
all right. Okay. Yeah, before we got off that, I wanted to make sure, because, and thank you for mentioning that it doesn't talk about severity, that yes, there may be a lot of accidents there because there's a lot of traffic, but you have more fatalities and more serious injuries at other places that isn't necessarily noted this way. Absolutely, yeah. This is just the very high level. Excellent, thank you. All right, so this is looking again, remember we were trying to be a little more holistic. So this is just generally citywide, how many crashes are occurring each year for each different crash type. So you'll see you've got this downward trend all the way through 2020. Then 2021, COVID ends, we get that people back out on the road, we see that spike back up again. But the overall trend line is still downward, and that is pretty dramatically different than what we have statewide, what we have even nationwide. The collisions have just been trending upwards across the board. And that's one of the reasons why Caltrans is pushing these programs so hard, because Caltrans is actually kind of leading your nation in increases in deaths and injuries. So the fact that you guys have a downward trend is a really good testament to the fact that you guys have been doing a great job in terms of tackling traffic safety, much more so than elsewhere in the state. So that's a really good testament, and really the implementation of this plan is designed to help accelerate that trend, but you're on a good path already. So the other big lesson here is just that when you look at the crash types that we see most common, broadside rear end, but hit object is also there, and that's kind of getting to what you're talking about. So that's when you have the mid-block thing where people go off the road for whatever reason and hit a pole. So that is a common crash type here, and it is one that we've been looking at.
What fits into that other category?
So other is, as you can see, that's actually really tiny at the bottom. There's not very many. So that tends to be either the officer that responded had no idea what happened, so they just had to click other, they didn't have something else to put there. But it can also be hit an animal, or it can be just a few more random things, like a box fell off the truck in front of you and you wiped out, some kind of single occupancy, or hit a parked car. There's a few things like that. So similarly, every time an officer responds to a crash, they have to note on the police report what did they felt was the primary factor that contributed to that crash that happened. So here, unsafe speed, number one factor. That's really common. We're not surprised by that. Number two was the auto right-of-way violation, which means somebody didn't wait their turn. They went too soon at the stop sign. They turned left in front of somebody coming on. There's all kinds of things there. Third was unsafe lane change, so they didn't do their shoulder checks. They just kind of, or didn't signal or something like that happened. You see, just those three things alone, that's more than half of all the collisions in the city. When you look down the list, you'll notice that there was one common factor there. Every last one of these is somebody made an error in judgment. Somebody made a mistake. There's no, the roadway was designed badly. There's no, the vehicle malfunctioned. So unless we really take seriously the driver behavior side of things, we can engineer all we want all day long. We're not going to completely solve the problem. We can nibble at the edges, we can reduce the severities, but we need to tackle that culture of driving at the same time. So as we were looking through those factors and the crashes types, we did choose out these three specific emphasis areas that seem like the ones that would help us the most in the city. So tackling these three factors. Speed management, as we pointed out, that was the number one factor. Doesn't necessarily mean people were going over the speed limit, but the responding officer felt they were going too fast for conditions. Maybe they turned too fast, or all kinds of things can happen. So some of the things that help with that are edgeline striping, and you may wonder what's the deal with that, but that comes to do with how big the roadway is. So in Corona, you've got a lot of really wide sections of pavement. It can feel like a big bowling alley. People get a chance to go fast. You drive the speed you feel you can get away with in terms of what the roadway looks like. So if you put in edgeline striping that kind of bring in that curb space, constrain the driving area a little bit more, that helps people cue them to subliminally drive slower. Putting more speed limit signs, actually those stencils where you have the speed limit number on the road, that actually does help people understand that they're not going to get away with things as easily. They can't claim they didn't see it or didn't know. Signal retiming, so a lot of the corridors, you've heard of the green waves, I'm sure, where you have certain corridors where you know speeds, you can actually set your signals so that if you go the right speed, you get to flow all the way along. If you go too fast, you end up stopping. Go too slow, you end up stopping. So that's all things. And then those speed feedback signs, I'm sure you've seen when you drive, they blink at you, and if you're going too fast. Those kind of have their pluses and minuses. They're great for short-term implementation if you move them around. If they're there too long, people just get used to them, but they can be helpful for short-term targeted reductions. So the second factor, vulnerable road users. So that's primarily pedestrians and bicycles. We can also include motorcycles in that. They tend to fall in that category as well. So they get helped the most when we're reducing those crossing distances. So if we extend curbs to shorten crosswalks, leading pedestrian interval timing, so that's when if you push your pedestrian call button at the intersection, your walk signal will come on a few seconds before the green light at the other way. So when the people are kind of ripping around the corner turning right, that's one of the most common pedestrian accidents at an intersection. So that helps prevent those. additional mid-block crossings. So there are parts in the city where they're really far apart and people just cross where they are because they don't want to walk half a mile to the next crosswalk. So there's appropriate places where you can put that in with proper protection. Buffered bike lanes. So on higher speed roadway, just painting a stripe down the side doesn't always actually improve safety as much as you might think it does. So providing that little extra buffer when you have room can really actually make a big difference in that. And then high visibility crosswalks. So you've all seen just 2 lines striped in the crosswalk. When you're driving on a high speed down the roadway, you don't always see those as quite closely. So when you kind of do that more piano stripe version of the crosswalk, those look more urban, they just stand out more, and drivers tend to respect them a little bit more because it just gives you more of a cue that you got to look for something.
Yeah, I'd like to add, a few of these you've already seen, we've been implementing them in the last 4 or 5 years. The buffered bike lanes, every time we have an opportunity to do pavement rehab, like Green River, Foothill, a little bit of Ontario, we've been able to add those buffered 3 to 5 feet lanes. I think the latest one was not Hidden Valley, but a little bit of Hidden Valley Promenade, those higher speeds to protect those cyclists, as well as the high visibility crosswalks. You see them around schools more often, the ladder keys. They tend to be a little more expensive, but we do feel that they are a little bit more, bring more awareness to the drivers.
So then the third area was lane departure, and that's really getting to your question on Hidden Valley and things. So these are the ones where you have side swipes or head-on collisions, or people just drive off the road and hit something randomly. So it's really all about how do you help people keep in the right lane. So usually those are either people are driving too fast. A lot of impaired driving happens that way. I might add that was actually really low on your list of crash causes, which was a nice thing to see, but it is still a factor. So putting in the medians that separate traffic from oncoming, so you don't have just the little, they're not so close to each other. In pavement reflectors, especially around curves, but anywhere where it may be dark, having those can help a lot. And then rumble strips, I'm sure you've seen that on the highways, where you don't have a curb and gutter at the end, or where your center line is there, you can put those in so people get the noise when they're drifting a little too close to the edge. But pretty much anything that was in the speed management category can also go in that category, because those are also all factors in that section.
So just to summarize, we'll be finalizing the local roadway safety plan report within the next month, in time for grant opportunities coming up. And just as one of the locations that we've identified is actually the Hidden Valley Parkway. But as we, and that was kind of an issue that came earlier when I first started, and we were kind of gearing towards that. But the way that the accident data and everything is projected, we're going to take it not just in that section, but take it all the way down to McKinley, so that we can look at the entire corridor, so that we're not just focusing on one. It actually benefits us to look at the entire corridor rather than just focus on one small section. We've also talked to Norco as well, because in that section, half of it belongs to the city of Norco. So we're going to try to get letters of commitment and also funding commitments as well. Should we receive the grant, they would be paying for half of our fair share as well.
Does that help with grants when you have 2 agencies or 2 communities? Okay.
Yes, it does. Whenever there's a partnership with another agency that's adjacent, that actually gives us better scoring. And also we'll be getting letters of recommendation.
Love it.
If it was possible to only study one side of that road, if they don't want to pay, they don't want to pay for a lot of things, and I'm not a big fan of that.
They've agreed to this section. We've had discussion with them way early on. In fact, they're actually doing some interim improvements just around the shopping center in that area, just to provide some delineators in the temporary before we actually have an opportunity to come in for the long-term solution.
Right.
So, I'm really excited. So we try to set ourselves up for future grant opportunities, and also have the grant itself set us up for grant opportunities.
And you've been, you and your department have been fantastic at accessing grants, so that's bravo. Okay.
That concludes our presentation. If you have a question, let us know.
I have a question, because there's not a day that I drive that I don't see people running red lights. I mean, it's at every intersection, and you all have probably noticed it, especially Magnolia and Kellogg, Ontario and Kellogg. I mean, we can have a green light and you still proceed cautiously because it's excessive. It just seems such a great increase in it over the last couple of years. And I wonder where this plan addresses that. I mean, is a longer yellow, a remedy or?
Yes, there's actually another grant that it's a citywide traffic signal improvement. You're taking my thunder here, but it's
Yeah.
great. But we're also going to be addressing another a grant that we're going to apply for. It's not just that corridor along Hidden Valley and McKinley, but an entire city traffic signal improvement where we're going to be able to adjust the possible look at signal timing and also make some just little tweaks here and there just to see if we can remedy that as well.
And you're gonna add a runway to the 91, I heard.
No, that's a possibility now.
Jim? Nada, thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
A couple things. Now that I see this, I'm a little bit worried about, the construction at McKinley Bridge. I just hope someone can sail those guys. Hey, we had a presentation and you're in a pretty tough area. That extra reminder might help out. So, and then, I'm a little worried about where 6th Street meets the 91. I didn't realize that they were having such a hard time there.
All kinds of conflicting emotions.
I think RCTC needs to help out with that. They designed it. And then I would say the biggest problem is design. So I'm looking at Ontario, where the beats the 15, and that's a design problem. But more importantly, a blind man could tell you that Magnolia was designed wrong over there. Yeah. So, I would say going forward, the design needs to be a big emphasis because that's where you get your future problems. And then again, please tell those McKinley people. they're in a
Again,
tough area.
these reports really set us up for example, when we apply for additional grants for Ontario, it only emphasizes that we have reports that justify that and the need. Thank you.
Jackie?
Yeah, I look at this map and I see where the red circles are, and I'm like, District 1
Yeah.
has both of the red circles, and that's not a distinction I want for District 1. But this is stuff we knew. Like, we knew that Rimpaw Magnolia 15 interchange is just nasty. And I'm hoping that actually the grade separation will help with this bigger circle on McKinley. But thinking as well, as I live there and that's my exit, there's the left turn lane into the Costco shopping center, and I know we've had conversations with the developer. There is an immediate left turn into like the FedEx office that during peak it backs up, and then folks are getting off the freeway trying to make that quick merger to get onto that left turn. So I am not surprised at all, and I would be willing for us to explore, policy changes if necessary, because that left turn is very problematic. It's within their shopping center.
It's on site.
It's on site. And they've been unwilling to change that, and that is impacting. Like, look at how many accidents are happening because of. Come on. So anyway, and then that hidden valley between Norco Hills and Staters. I'm so glad that is specifically drawn out. This is interesting. Because I was wondering like what solutions actually look like. When you're covering solutions, they all felt like, of course, right? And when you said that people drive the speed you feel you can get away with is so accurate. Like, how many of us tune out when you're driving? It's just automatic, right? But then if it feels unsafe, you get like you don't even think about it. You slow down, and urban developers have shown, before and after pictures of dangerous streets that suddenly get lined with trees, or sidewalks are removed, or it visually looks like you cannot drive 75 miles an hour, so therefore people don't. So that's just really interesting to me. And Savat, you and your team are so aggressive with grant getting. I think you guys, you're gonna win some like grant award winning or something for the city. So I am all in favor. Thank you very much for all of this work.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Very interesting, thank you very much.
Yeah, this is great, because this is the stuff that impacts everybody, and Jackie said it perfectly, that this is, this is such a quality of life thing for folks, and, it's interesting going back and talking to the folks on Georgetown after they were so skeptical that just putting 2 white lines is gonna slow people down, and it has, and it's drastic, and I talked to one of the folks that was probably the largest, opponent of just putting those lines down, and I stop in and talk to her husband every now and then, and he says, Wes, it's totally different. He said it's still you get an idiot that drives too fast, but for the most part, people slow down. So it's working. Keep doing what you're doing.
I stopped running red lights when I got elected.
The tagging and the red light project,
Put
both of
it
those
into
things
all
went
of
down
it.
the website.
I was gonna say that upward trend that's catching up to all of his artwork.
Getting up out there.
All right, Ms. Edwards, do we have any
But I
speaker
hope you're
cards?
reelected.
Okay, so we are adjourned, and we'll come back for city council meeting on August 17th. Thank you.